Welcome back to the True North podcast. So this week we are going to be looking back at our base camp that we just got done with last week. It was the last one in Oklahoma for 2024, and it was incredible. We had about 100 guys there, and it was led by these two incredible gentlemen, Mr. James Hugo and Chad Parks. Welcome to the podcast,
Thanks,
guys.
James.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, so Chad, let's start with you. So you actually shadowed camp director for the first time. You've been on a couple of camp staffs before on the admin team. You've responded. Tell us a little bit, a quick clip of like what your exposure to True North has been, how you got involved, and where you're at now.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, James. I think I first heard about True North probably in 2016 or 17. My wife and I had recently joined a life group through Life Church here in Edmond, Oklahoma City area. And one or two of the men had attended a couple of True North events.
Yeah.
And I was completely uninterested
Yep.
in what he was describing to me. It sounded like the last thing that I would want and ever do. And then 2020 hit. And as you remember, COVID hit. Some of you involved in the organization know my story. I had a house fire in a newer house that we had just lived in for a few months. My adult kids had all returned home to work from home. We were displaced in a hotel for about 3 weeks and then a rental house for 9 months while they restored and rebuilt our house. Also during that time, some long-term personal and marital issues arose throughout that stressful situation. And a good friend suggested base camp. And I went in August of 2020.
Yeah, it was our first one after COVID because we had to cancel the spring, and then we created one in August. And I remember that's the first time I'd met you.
Yeah. And one of my former colleagues that I worked with several years ago was on staff, Damon Moran.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of surprised to see Damon there. And we talked for a little bit. And Damon said, I saw you were coming to this event. I've been praying for you for the last several weeks. And that just really affected me a lot. That camp was not the best first experience. There were a few things that happened at that camp and some distractions. I wasn't quite in the best place yet personally to really experience the change in the relationship that Jesus and God had in mind for me.
Yeah.
You think you just didn't go through it well, or like what? Like, do you have your phone on you all weekend? Do you have?
No, frankly, I just didn't want to be there. And I thought I've been in church my whole life and been in some pretty deep discipleship and inductive Bible study curriculums. And I was kind of full of myself. I thought I was a little smarter and wiser and just really didn't need to be here.
Right.
Had not embraced the fact.
You'd already arrived and there was no more growth for you.
Yeah. I'm just checking the box because my wife and some other people wanted me to do this.
Yeah.
I'm just checking this box.
Yeah.
But so after that experience, I came home and had not fully embraced and didn't follow through on many of the things I learned, and found myself in another bad spot about 30 or 45 days later, and was basically given an ultimatum that there are several things you need to do or your marriage may not survive this. And one of them was return to base camp. And this time I went with some other men that I had found through True North and through some small groups, and was much better timing, God's timing at this camp, and was just amazed. Then I followed up shortly thereafter, about 6 months later, I think, with the Ascent at Kingfisher, And then started serving at base camps, shadowed shortly after there. That would have been like late 2021, early 22.
What was the awakening there between going to that second base camp, going to the ascent, and serving? Like, clearly something stirred in you to get involved. What would you say the thing was for you that made you buy into this?
I think I looked at my Christian walk more from an academic and theological perspective rather than a relationship with Jesus, and that he wanted to have a relationship with me, not just be there on the shelf when the house burns down or the marriage is about to burn down or you're having trouble with your kids or with your family, but really a day-to-day walk and relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And that the struggles and the things that I was going through were not just unique to me. That a lot of men, if not every man, at every camp, in every ascent, is dealing with some form of what I was dealing with. There's isolation, there's loneliness, there's low self-esteem, low self-confidence, always trying to achieve things on a worldly basis or professional basis, or, have the perfect home, have the perfect wife, have the perfect kids, have the perfect cars, have the perfect job, just all of those things.
Yeah.
And it was at that point that when it's all stripped away from you, you realize it's just not that important.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really good.
So to kind of finish up the story, so I've been serving on the admin / host team, which I enjoy, making coffee, putting snacks out, making sure guys have bedding and towels and all of those things, because I feel like that's just always been where I've been called, is to serve, to be the hands and feet of God and of Jesus. And so last February, I was serving with James. I think this is the third or fourth camp that I've worked with you on.
Yeah.
And we always have a great time, and always look forward to it. But I was feeling a little bit shut out or distanced a little bit from the organization. And I kept feeling like I want to have a bigger role. I want to help, whether financially or active and volunteering in some capacity. And when I arrived at camp to serve on admin team in February, I just felt like I wasn't feeling that love or that desire from the leadership team to really leverage my talents and get involved.
So I was not leading that camp, by the way. Just saying.
I was about ready to point out, like, you saw James leading the camp, and you're like, I could do better than that.
Yeah. Well, that goes without saying, right? But yeah, I wouldn't tell that joke, James. Anyway, so I was kind of moping around a little bit as we were preparing for camp. And then you, James, came up to me and said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And I said, "Sure. What's up?" And you said, "I think I'd like for you to shadow the camp director next year or later this year." And I was just like, whoa. I thought you guys didn't like me anymore. So yeah, that was definitely a welcome invitation that you gave me. And
wow.
I've been very surprised by that opportunity. And this weekend was eye-opening, and James and Brandon and Tyson and all the guys leading the team did a fantastic job. And it was just a real privilege to serve and shadow and watch all the pieces fall into place.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's a good time.
We'll get into some of the stories from this weekend. But first, James, will you share kind of your experience, like getting involved with True North?
Yeah, I know it was from the early days of True North, but I'm not sure exactly what year. I can't remember. I know I got married 2013, and then it was shortly after that. A group of guys, I remember seeing them in a parking lot, loading up in a truck, and I was like, what are you guys doing? They were like, we're going to this camp called True North Basecamp. And they told me all about it, and they were like, you can come. Like right now, you can come. They were invite machines, and I was like, no. I mean, I was walking in to work, and they followed up with me, and I knew them well enough that I was just like, I trust these guys. I feel like this could be something good for me.
Yeah.
And I went and I don't remember a ton from my first few experiences. I know, I think you said you were kind of like maybe guarded, or you felt like you were far enough along, or there was nothing else to learn. I think for me, I thought I was doing the work. I was just distracted for the most part for the first couple camps, but it was enough introduction to the ministry that I knew it was good, and I knew I wanted to be involved. So I just kept going. And every time I'd go, God would kind of have something else for me.
Mhm.
Even in those early days, if I wasn't present and I was distracted, I was always taking away something.
Yeah.
What I wasn't doing was coming home to a community and further growing that. So that was a big miss in those early days. But then my involvement, it was funny. The more I fell in love with the ministry, the more I enjoyed it, the more I was growing from it and starting to grow in the community. I would go and I would watch the director, and I'd have these moments where I thought, that looks like fun. I feel like I could maybe do that.
Yeah.
I have no like stage experience or very little leadership experience, but something started to kind of grow in me of like, there's a curiosity there.
Yeah.
And I would go home and be like, that's dumb. And I mean, years would go by, and James and Ryan had me out to lunch, and they said, we want you to consider being a director. And my response was, I know.
Yeah.
Because, I was saying no. And then it was just like, God was going to call me up to it,
Yeah.
whether I liked it or not.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that. That's such a good lesson for so many guys too, is like God will call you to it. To whatever that is.
Whether you're
right?
kicking and screaming or not.
Right. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to strive to wedge yourself into place. Like in both of your cases, right? Like y'all are sitting back, like you're just open. You're available to what God has for you. And
much like people feel like they got to clean themselves up to come to church, I think I felt like I needed to be emotionally ready.
Mhm.
I needed to be confident, before I stepped into that. And it's like, well, that happens in process.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's really taking the risk and trusting God to go, hope you got me, because I do not feel capable of this.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey.
It's awesome. So have you counted how many you've directed now?
Oh man.
I want to say it's like 4 or 5.
4 or 5, something like that. Mm-hmm.
So I love that, man.
Yeah.
I love having you as a director, and like I wish there was a way to convey like from a leadership standpoint of what it feels like to hand over the reins to a weekend like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I go and help set up, and then I go home a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And so to have these certain guys in place where they're the camp director and I am entrusting them, like the feeling inside of like, it's good. This is going to be great. I don't know exactly how it's going to go down. Like, and I'm sure that there's going to be things that don't align with the agenda or the plan, but I trust that will be exactly how God wants it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not many people that I can think could step into that. And James, you are one of those people that I can just trust to make this experience unique, but yet still completely honoring to the process.
Yeah.
To where it won't be compromised, but it will be unique and joyful, and the men that come in will be loved. So I'm so thankful to have you in that spot.
Thank you.
So let's talk.
Can I
Yeah,
Can
go
I
ahead.
jump in? I'd be remiss and I'd catch grief if I didn't clarify a little bit on that first camp. So, to your question, in 2018, Life Church had a men's night at the Edmond campus called Wildlife,
Yep.
and Trey Dixon spoke and gave his testimony at that event, and it really resonated with me because Trey and I have similar professional careers that we kind of mirrored each other. So after I heard him speak, I reached out to him. Still thought he was in the investment business at the time, which is the business I'm in as well, financial planning. But he had not. He had joined True North and had started this ministry full time. So we had coffee, and then he got me hooked into an accountability group, my band of brothers who are probably out there and know who they are. And that's ultimately what led me to sign up and go to that first camp. And it was down at Lake Texoma because of the COVID event. And so halfway to that event, as I was passing down I-35 through Pauls Valley, if you're familiar with that part of Oklahoma, I got a phone call from one of the men in my accountability group and said, "How you doing? Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm at, about halfway there, and I think I'm going to turn around and just head on home. I got a lot on my plate.
Yeah.
Got this house fire to deal with. I need to do some things." And he goes, "No, keep on going. Keep on going." And then at one point on Friday afternoon during the camp, there was a session that I thought was just way out there and did not appeal to me at all. So I went back to my cabin and I packed my bags, and I was going to head on home Friday night. And Kenny O'Neill walked in. He was in the bunkhouse with me and said, "Hey man, what are you doing?" And I said, "Yeah, this is a little out there for me. I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to head on back home. I got some things to take care of."
I think I know what session you're talking about.
Yeah, you probably know. And some of you will know that later too, probably. But no, he sat down and talked with me and just had a conversation and encouraged me to stay and said it'll get better. You'll be glad you did. So
that's awesome.
That's how that.
And you're still with that group of guys
I am.
now, aren't you?
Yeah, sure am.
I think several of them came to camp
There were
this last weekend.
4 or 5 of us total that were at camp this weekend. I think there may be only 1 or 2 in our group that have not gone.
Yeah.
One was supposed to go, and we're probably going to have to, don't repeat this, but kidnap him and duct tape him and drive him down there, drop him off sometime.
We have a van.
Yeah.
So we can help.
We'll get him there. We'll get him there.
Yeah. So let's talk about last weekend. So we actually have something that I'm pretty excited about. We don't know the timeline on it yet, and I'm not going to put any pressure on Taylor, but we kind of had a film crew follow you this weekend from like leaving for camp all the way through the camp and the end of camp. And I think our hope with that is just to show some of the authenticity and genuineness of Basecamp and what that looks like. And so, how was that experience? Was that a lot of fun?
What I thought was going to happen was we were going to record some footage on the way down there and just kind of talk about it, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then I realized Taylor had plans to follow me all weekend, so I missed that. And so I thought that was going to be a distraction. I thought it would maybe make me uncomfortable. I quickly forgot about the microphone I was wearing. I would have these moments where I was in the restroom or something, wondering and imagining like, or I'd have like a full-on conversation during free time, and I'm still wearing a microphone, wondering like, Taylor's going to get a kick out of this, and he's got a lot of audio to listen through. But honestly, it ended up being really great. And what I told Taylor on the way home was we had checkpoints along the way, and it kind of forced me to unpack like the rhythm of a base camp, right? So here we are Thursday, this is going on. Here we are Friday, here's where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I even used the word temperature, like the temperature of the camp
Yeah.
changes throughout the weekend.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of neat to talk through that as it's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's almost like it's forcing you to center in on what's happening
Yeah.
and have awareness. Whereas
Yeah.
sometimes, even as directors,
Yeah.
we can walk through camp and you're kind of just floating from thing
Yeah.
to thing without really checking
Yeah,
in
you're
on.
focusing on the next thing.
Yeah.
And to sit and have a greater context of what we've gone through, where we're at right now, and where we're heading at any point in the camp was really valuable to me.
And it was distracting, but in a good way.
Yeah,
it's like
it
a
was.
good distraction.
Well, it ended up becoming something that, I know it's so that we can go tell a story and give people a better idea of what happens behind the scenes and all that. But personally, it became very valuable for me.
I love that.
So yeah,
that's awesome. So let's talk about what happened. Was there anything that stood out to you guys about this camp compared to past camps, whether it be I'd love to get into some, if you guys got any funny stories or any life-changing stories that you heard, or even just the temperature of the whole weekend.
How much time we got?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I would say, first of all, we had a very large staff this time, and a number, half a dozen or 8 shadows.
16 or 17 people on staff, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that really created an environment of comfort and calm
and
care for the men that attended camp. Because we were kind of able to divide and conquer more effectively with that many staff members, and setup and takedown was much faster. And that allowed us to have some time to build relationships with each other and with the participants. The weather, we had
exactly what it was.
It was
supposed to be.
perfect. It was just, you couldn't have written a better script, because we pulled in and it was Thursday night. It was a little cool, a little cloudy, a little overcast, and then the rain came in and kind of washed things out to some degree on Friday. However, there was a good sand volleyball game in the rain on the sport court
downpour.
In a complete downpour.
Was it at nighttime too? I heard it was at night.
At night, after the events of Thursday.
I think Taylor got some of that.
Dude, that's wild.
Probably got some pictures or some video of that.
How did it get started?
Crazy.
Just a couple young kids, probably.
Some guys
this.
out there.
Yeah, we had a lot of very energetic, youthful participants.
The rain started and no instructions were necessary.
Yeah. Just
they
like John talks
boys.
about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then Saturday, the skies opened to just
it's
beautiful sunrise, crystal blue skies, mild temperatures, and just perfect. So we got both sides of it.
I remember we sent them on their first kind of time of silence.
Yeah.
And it hadn't been raining all morning.
Yeah.
And we
As
sent
soon
them
as
out,
they walked out the door,
and I'm like, it's dry out there, sun's coming out, it's great, guys.
Yeah.
Sent them out like three, like it was like as soon as they all got out the doors, it started raining again. It's funny.
That's awesome.
It's funny. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? I think just for me, I mean, it happens every camp. I say it over and over again. It doesn't matter how much I prepare my heart. Like, all the men show up. Nobody knows anybody. They maybe come in some groups, and there's this like kind of everybody's sizing up everybody and kind of labeling everybody and maybe avoiding certain people that you can't relate to. And that happens. And then by Friday afternoon, people start warming up. But by the end of the weekend, it's like, it is full on a family.
Yeah.
And I just love to see what can happen over just a few days.
Yeah.
When the poser drops and you're working through and you're doing some hard work together. So you have that collective experience.
Yeah.
It blows me away every time.
Yeah.
I should no longer be surprised by it, but I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah, and I think the attitude and the responsiveness of the men that went to camp, the participants that were at camp,
Yeah.
was excellent. They were in their seats on time when a session
That
started.
was different.
They left
Uh-huh.
they left the mess hall, the chow hall, when
They
they
were
were
eager.
asked to. I mean, there was nobody
Yep.
straggling around that we had to say, "Hey, come on, get back in here," etc. Men were generally removed from their technology, their phones, and were really engaging with each other and stepping up
Right.
and stepping in.
That's so good. Did many guys play laser tag?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm one of the older guys at camp, so I was usually
You're
in my bougie bed by the time all those shenanigans got started.
Mhm.
I think there were.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Chad, you got to respond again with
Right.
it. You don't have to share what your response was, but how was that experience for you? I know, James, you've responded before too, right? Like, so I guess for people that haven't been to base camp, we do video teaching from John Eldridge, and there's moments in several of the sessions where the video fades off and live, what we call responder, comes up, and then they're just there to share their story. They're not teaching, they're not getting a point across. They're just there to share their story. And so that's one of the beautiful things that happens at base camp is we just have volunteers and it's different every single time, that come up and share that. How was that moment for you this weekend?
Well, I responded to a particular session, and it was the same one that drove me to almost leave
wow.
the first camp I went to.
Yeah.
And the way it came about is my wife and I after my first camp in 2020, I was telling my wife about this particular session and how it just didn't resonate real well with me, and I wasn't it's kind of out there for my particular liking. And shortly after that, we would kind of joke about it sarcastically with each other, and she would kind of give me a hard time about it. And then a few months later, we heard a sermon at church that was on that very topic. And we both kind of looked at each other and were like, okay, maybe this isn't really funny. Maybe God's kind of poking us a little bit that, hey, pay attention to this. And then we heard a little 1-minute message on K-Love one day driving in the car, same topic.
Yeah.
And then just a few weeks ago at church in a sermon, very similar topic came up. And I think it was that Sunday afternoon that I sent a text to James and said, I think I might need to respond to this. I keep hearing this come up in my daily life, and I don't think it's an accident.
Yeah.
And there are no accidents with God, right? God kind of pokes you every now and then. And so with just a couple week and a half, 2 weeks notice, I sort of put some thoughts down and tried to prepare it, and took to the stage. Had a little problem with the microphone, kind of threw me off for a minute because it wasn't connected and working like it was supposed to, but we kind of regrouped and got on there, and I delivered the response, and man, the response to the response was overwhelming. And I really wasn't as prepared as I thought I should be going up there. Wasn't real sure how it was going to flow as a message or as my story, but by the grace of God and through his power, I think a lot of people heard that. And I think it's so important that we have men go up and respond and share their story. Because from that Friday afternoon until we left Sunday, of the 80, 85 campers we had, I had so many guys come up and say, I heard you say that, and I've had to deal with that too.
Yeah.
Or
Or I needed to hear that.
I needed to hear that message. And So
I see you're wearing your fishing socks too.
I am wearing my fishing socks.
Compliments your response.
That's right. Got my fishing socks on.
You had a fly fishing
Analogy
in
that I used.
there that's beautiful.
Right.
Nice.
So
That's I heard it was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
So
Good,
well
good.
done.
And
Well-
I think, you know what's interesting? Like you said, we had a little problem. It's funny how you remember it. Like we had a little problem with the microphone. And when you're the person in it, right, you're like, oh man,
Yeah.
this is already not going well. From my perspective, I look at that and I go, that actually, I saw it as a good thing. It got you out of your head
Mhm.
before you started to respond.
Mhm.
So I think it's just like I embrace more than ever this camp being like, it's okay to mess things up.
Mhm.
And there was plenty of stuff I messed up. And like perfection is never the target.
Yeah.
Like just stepping out and trusting God
Mhm.
and just embrace the mistakes. So I saw it as a good thing, you know,
Yeah.
and we're more human whenever things don't go well.
Yeah.
We're more relatable when
Yeah.
things don't go well.
Yeah.
But to model how we handle that, I think is really important. You
Mhm.
know,
That's good.
yeah, the way I ran up and cracked, you know,
Yeah.
you and I were
We're
kind of being
cracking jokes.
playful
Yeah.
in that transition, trying to figure out the technology.
It's the old
So it's
saying,
good.
make a plan, make God laugh.
Yeah.
And we had this plan. I had this
Yeah.
plan in my head and this vision of how I was going to do certain things.
Right.
And then right off the bat, the mic wasn't working right. So it's
Right.
like, okay,
Yep.
just let go
Not
and
the
let God.
plan.
Let go and let
Yeah.
God, right?
That's
It was
awesome.
great.
So James, on the way to camp, or maybe in the week leading up,
Uh-huh.
we had some conversations, and you were feeling going into this like God was pulling you into almost a sage type of
Right.
role, and like a different, not as worried about the logistics of camp and getting the P's and Q's all done, and more so of posturing your heart in a different way to lead
Mhm.
camp. How did you see that play out over the weekend?
Yeah, what I was talking to you about was doing it just enough times to not be overly concerned with the technical side of, you know, a director's job is to keep things on time and
Mhm.
make sure what the plan is executed. And so now that I've kind of gone through that, I was less concerned with that and overly focused on that and more focused on relationships and just all of that. And there was a feeling driving there. I don't know how well it'll be interesting seeing what Taylor got on the drive down there, but I think I said something along the lines of like, this one really feels different. Something feels different heading there. And I don't know that I used the words father or sage. Maybe I did, but like a deep love for the attenders was growing in me in a way that I hadn't experienced before. And it was a feeling of like, I have now walked this walk for 10 years and I've stumbled for most of it. And then every year God continues to refine and sharpen me. And I've really felt like for the first time I was showing up going, I really have something to offer. And I'm excited to do that. And it wasn't coming from a prideful thing. It was just, man, I've now been through some stuff and walked through some hard times with good men. Full disclosure though, like before, I mean, back up a couple of weeks, it was just like, oh my gosh, man, things were busy. Last year I served in November. Then a few of us went to Colorado and went to an Eldridge camp. Like the very week after, and I haven't really been to a retreat, a camp since then.
Yeah.
And so being a little removed from it, there were a lot of feelings of like, man, like just kind of like being detached a little bit. Like, am I still called to this? I'm not sure. Like, so there were some doubts going in, but doing it enough, knowing just silence that and break those agreements and step into it, trust God. And by the end of the weekend, it was like, oh yeah, I'm all in this. So, you learn to trust the process more and more the more you do it.
Yeah.
You know, and that goes just with your daily lives.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, did you guys have some fun moments? I heard about some funny stuff happening with the canoes.
Man.
Did you hear about the canoe stuff?
I think if it's what I'm thinking, yeah.
So I heard that there was a couple guys that were out on the lake in a canoe, and the guy that was in the back was telling me like he was shaking it back and forth.
Frank,
And the guy in front was like, "Would you stop?"
Yeah.
And of course, the water's pretty cold.
Yeah.
And he said that he did it one more time, and he went a little bit too far, and
yeah.
they all tumped over.
Yeah. They had gone all the way down the lake.
Yeah.
And we're about 30 yards from being back on dry land. And we were down, me and Taylor and a couple of guys were down by the lake, and we're talking to them. They're going by. And then you just hear the splash. And then it's kind of quiet. And then it's just laughter. Just like break full on, just the best laughter. And that I think playfulness, play and doing things that you either haven't done in a long time, or that you've never done, is part of the opportunity of the weekend, right? To come out and let loose and have a little fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had Saturday, we set up the shotgun range.
Yeah.
And
which I didn't hang around for that, which is ironic. I'm usually always
there.
over there.
I heard there was a lot of guys out.
We had a lot of guys
for the shotguns too.
We had a lot. And there were two young men there that are from Peru.
Pavel and Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul had never shot a gun and said, "I'd like to shoot."
Yes.
And so another camper said, "Here, take my gun and I'll stand behind you and I'll show you how to hold it and tuck it into your shoulder."
Do you remember?
Not right off the top of my head. I can see his face.
Was it camper?
It was a camper.
Good.
Yeah.
And disclosure, we have NRA certified range safety officers. We actually had four, which Chad's one of them. We had 4 of them at this camp. So if you're looking at it and you haven't been to base camp, we do our due diligence of training and making sure that our ranges are safe.
Yeah.
With that being said, continue.
Yeah. When I first went to a camp,
on the bottom of the screen.
We'll scroll it on the bottom.
When I went to that first camp, I was like, man, look at all these guys with guns out here. Somebody's going to get hurt. But no, it is very well run. And the training that we get through the NRA safety officer course, it usually goes very well.
And we have an excellent prayer team. So whenever guys do get shot, we just, they get
over
healed just like that.
Yeah.
It's
The
no big
Holy
deal
Spirit
at all.
comes in. But Paul fired off his first shot and he looks back with this big smile on his face. He goes, "Man, that was sweet," and he was hooked, man. He loved that shotgun, but it kicked and punched his shoulder pretty good, but he loved it. He loved it. So that was a real fun moment. It's always fun when people come and maybe haven't experienced something, whether it be a canoe ride or shooting a shotgun or going through the ropes course or whatever, and really just engage in that activity and learn something new. And it's such a great experience.
Why do you think it's important for us to do those things?
It's living for adventure.
Okay.
Yeah, we gotta live for that adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a guy, I think it was the September camp, came up to me on Sunday morning. He's like, "I climbed to the top of the rock wall." And he was saying, maybe we had a conversation about it in years past or something, but like, he was looking at me like, "I did it." And I was like, "I didn't know that was a thing for you, but awesome. Yeah. Well done." Yeah. But you could just tell it was a huge moment. And then our friend Dave Dunn, a big moment for him. He talks about back in the Anadarko days, they had a telephone pole that you climb, the pamper pole that you climb up and you stand on top of it.
And that thing is just
moving. It's just, and you jump off of it and grab onto this ribbon that's, a little bit of ways away, and you're suspended and harnessed and everything. But it's a big deal. That was such a huge deal of just overcoming some fear and living in that adventure.
Yeah.
It's so cool that stuff happens at camp. So let's talk about maybe some stories that happened that a little bit more spiritual in nature and transformative. Did you guys have any conversations with any campers or experienced anything with the campers where they had something pretty cool happen?
Yeah, many stories. I'm trying to think. Do you have one off the top of your head?
Well, a couple things happened both on Friday at lunch and then Saturday evening. Friday at lunch, what I try to do when I serve at camp is go find different guys to sit down, different men to sit down and have lunch with, and
Yeah.
just get to know them and um, kind of get out of the comfort zone of sitting with the same people every time, or the people that you know. So I went and sat down with a young man and introduced myself. And there was an older gentleman sitting across from him, and I introduced myself to him, and I said, "Do you guys know each other?" And the younger man said, "Yeah, this is my grandfather."
Oh,
Mm.
And being a new grandfather myself, I mean, that was a very poignant moment for me, and was like, so then my mind goes down. Oh, one day I could be sitting here with my grandsons
yeah.
and experiencing camp. That'd be so awesome. So, for two generations to do that, and then
You know what's
on
cool about that is the grandson had actually been before.
yes,
And he invited the
he invited his
grandfather
grandfather to
to
go.
come. How
Yeah,
cool is that?
Wow.
yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, he brought Grandpa to the camp, and then Saturday in a little small group session that we have, I sat with a father and son, college age young man and his father, and they dealt with some personal issues that I maybe not feel so comfortable talking with my dad about,
Mhm.
and they were open and transparent about some things they were struggling with. And so, I had two little stories of, different generations connecting at the event. And that was really cool
Mhm.
to see that happen.
Yeah, I struggle to think of any specific story. So much happened. I think God was really generous with the staff.
Mm.
Like I think he just had so many gifts for the staff.
Hmm.
Um and for me personally, just the growth that I felt and the love for the staff was just it was just incredible.
Hmm.
Um and that really kind of changed my perspective on, you know, I'm here for multiple reasons. And the staff was so big, and I had my concerns on like this is a little out of hand here, but
I was worried too. I was worried it'd be distracting or,
it was amazing.
yeah.
It was amazing. And so our morning prayer times were really incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Josh King led us through some really beautiful moments. I'll let those remain for the staff, I think. Um, really, is it okay to talk about the fires, even though I know we
Yeah.
kind of keep that as a treat for
Yeah.
the most part? This is the first time we've separated the fires. We divided the room straight in half, right down the middle aisle, because of the numbers. Because I think this goes to your leadership, speaks to your leadership too. Of you get 100 guys out there, and you'll be out there till 1 o'clock in the morning, breaking agreements
Hmm.
and all of that. And so honoring the men and honoring the time, and I think it honors our families back at home because we're more rested,
Yeah.
you know. But we split it, straight down the middle. And um, the fire I was at was getting close to wrapping up, and I actually mentally was starting to wonder like, who's going to finish first? I don't know why I was thinking about that.
Were
And
you trying to finish first?
no,
So
no,
someone's
it's
up
just
there
like
at the fire. You're like, yada, yada, yada.
just
Like,
like I felt like we were getting pretty close to
yeah.
ending. And out of nowhere, you hear them yell freedom at the other fire. And
Mhm.
it just comes like roaring over the hill. And we are behind buildings. We're up above this hill.
Yeah.
And there's this moment where everybody kind of looked at each other like, what was that? Are we okay? What was
Yeah.
that? Like a little bit of fear.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just sounded like
Did they think they were
warriors.
being invaded?
It just sounded like warrior. And it was
Mm-hmm.
so cool to get to experience that.
Yeah.
And feel the fight that they had in their heart. They're
Mhm.
back in the fight again. They had context for what was going on and all that. Ah, that was cool. That was really special. Um, um, there were several guys that I just observed in the crowd during the sessions, thinking they're totally checked out, and maybe even mention them in staff meetings, and we're praying for them and fighting for them, and one of those guys gave their life to Christ, or I mean, several of them did, but one in particular, half the time I thought he was asleep.
Yeah.
And got a text message from a friend that knew him and was like, man, it was a very transformative weekend for him.
Wow. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
I think Eldridge actually even talks about that in some of his like training videos that he gives to organizations like us. He talks about like there'll be guys in your audience that you're thinking this is not landing. Like their body language, the energy they're giving off is like not good. But then they'll come back and talk about how transformative it was. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
There was one man that came up to me and he said, man, I just got to tell you, thank you for that advice that you just gave. And I was like, what? So for my first few camps, I would go out to the time of silence and I walked and I picked leaves off of trees and I pet the goats across the street at Anadarko and I thought I was doing the work. And, I might look at my journal and take a question and then I'm petting a goat and I was just distracted. I'm easily distracted anyway. I think we're all in agreement on that. And so, and I'd go home going like, I think I got stuff out of it, but like I was not willing to sit with God long enough to hear anything.
Yeah.
And so I went to one camp years ago and I felt like God was like, pick a spot and that's your spot for every quiet time. Sit there and use the entire time. And I got so much out of that
time
camp.
out corner.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was like, dude, I'm gonna have to put you. Yeah. So, partway through the weekend, I didn't lead with that. Here's a suggestion, but partway through the weekend, I observed a lot of guys kind of wandering around and I saw me there years ago.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, man, if you're having a hard time getting anything out of quiet time, here's the advice. And I told him, this guy came up and was like, man, I was getting nothing out of quiet time. And you said that. And I did it and wow. And so he was so excited to tell me. So that was really encouraging.
I have a funny story about a friend of mine that went to his first base camp. It was the same first one that you went to back in 2020. And he said he went out for like one of the first quiet times, and at that place, it's a really flat land. And then there's just sporadic trees it's all taken care of underneath. And so it's all really open, but there's a bunch of trees. And so for his quiet time, he goes and sits down and leans his back up against a tree. And like 2 minutes later, this younger guy comes and sits about 20 feet across from him. And he's thinking in his head, like, really? Like this dude couldn't find somewhere
facing him?
Facing him.
All the places.
Literally couldn't find another place. 10 seconds later, what are you doing? During a quiet time.
Is it they were both campers, though?
No, the other guy that sat across from him, like, just starts talking to him, and he's like...
But it's a camper.
A camper.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's like, going through my questions. Oh, anything good? Or like, he's just like, and he's like, I think we're supposed to be quiet right now.
What was your answer to number 3?
It's like, I think we're supposed to be quiet right now. It's like, and so I apologize to him for his experience, but
that's funny. Yeah. Yeah.
Another cool thing that happened is on Friday night, you did a salvation call.
Yeah. And
it was not a sales pitch. There was no pressure. I think you just made the invitation and then just left the room silent. And we had 2 men raise their hand that night. And Saturday morning at our staff prayer time and kind of going over the day, Alan Gibson, shout out to you, said, I think today there's going to be 3 more. And if you know Alan, you're like, yeah, whatever, Alan, sure. He goes, no, I hear the Holy Spirit talk to me. I think there's 3 more out there. Okay. we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We come to Saturday night.
Yeah.
You gave the salvation call. Ironically, Alan was not in the room at the time. He was off preparing the fire.
Mm.
And we had 3 hands go up that night.
Wow.
And shortly after the fire, I went up to Alan. I was like, did you hear about the salvation call? He goes, no, what happened? I said, 3 more.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's incredible.
You know, this camp was a big stretch for me I feel like anytime I was talking to the crowd from up front during transitions or salvation call or leading into worship or whatever, was just like really tried to give them a look, a transparent look into kind of what I was thinking or what was going on. And I remember that salvation call, especially that second one, being like, this isn't something I don't work for a church. I don't do this every weekend. It would make sense that there would be spiritual attack there, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to make you uncomfortable. Who are you to do this? All of that disqualification. And I made that salvation call, and it's hard to sit in silence, right? And you don't want to overweight
Yeah.
because you feel like then you're manipulating,
Yeah.
right? And then but you don't want to jump into be like, okay, all right, let's move on
Yeah.
because you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it's this weird kind of
Balance,
like
yeah.
balance. And I remember that second time just saying, I'm not waiting for me. I'm trusting that God's doing something here.
Yeah.
And I said, can we be in agreement that we're all just going to wait in silence for a little bit?
Yeah.
And I saw heads bow and people start praying.
Yeah.
And that's when, another hand went up that didn't want to go up.
right.
So allowing that space without being in your head, and you don't want to force something like that. But I really lean more into trusting God, being vulnerable in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And I think
I love that.
I think
that's what we're all about, right?
Yeah.
That's what True North is. It's authenticity, genuineness. Like, we're not trying, there's no charades here. We're not trying to trick anybody into a different program to buy into. It's like, no, it's authentic.
Yeah.
And I mean, to that, like, you hear salvation call, what you need to know is we ask the question, what church home are you a part of in their registration? And probably more than 95% of the guys have a church home. And this is absolutely not a knock on the churches that they're going to. Like there's incredible churches doing incredible things, and I'm sure that they're all a part of those. But there's something about what happens during this weekend, the awakening that happens to this authentic gospel of the masculine heart of Jesus and an authentic walk with Jesus and what that looks like, and the opportunity to sit where you're stripping away wounds and getting a bigger picture on your life, and then you're being offered salvation from your story into a larger story. It's incredible. Like, holy moly, how do we have this many guys saying yes to that? And but it happens every camp, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So well done in that.
Yeah.
It's a good job.
There's a lot more emotion that I felt in it in a beautiful way. Like not as concerned with trying to like keep it together.
Yeah.
In front of the guys.
Yeah.
And that was really freeing.
Awesome.
That was good.
That's so good.
So we had at least 6 or 8 veterans that were there.
Uh-huh.
And these men I think they came together, and yesterday was Veterans Day. So I want to give a appreciation to those veterans that were at camp this weekend and the service that you did for all of us. But there were 6 or 8 that were along the west wall facing into the crowd.
Yeah.
And I think early you or Brandon or one of the other staff asked them to move their chairs over into the middle with the others. And they were kind of like, we'd respectfully not like to do that. We're all former veterans and
Yeah.
They don't like to have
servicemen.
their
And
back exposed.
we like to have our
Yeah.
back to the wall. We want to see the entrances and the exits. And I was kind of like, well, I'm glad you guys are here. You just never know what may go on, but they were vigilant about that. And then last thing I'll add is that there was one disappointment for me. Orville Fessler, the OG, the original sage that's been to almost every base camp, if not every camp, had to leave Friday evening due to an upper respiratory infection that he had. And Orville, if you're out there, we've been praying for you, and I hope you're better and ready to go for the next camp. So it was sad to see you leave Friday night, but I think that was a smart thing for him to do, take care of himself.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Orville's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
He's a staple in True North's fabric. And I did hear, he messaged me Sunday, said he was already feeling better.
Good.
Still unsure. Like, we have Texas this week, which by the time this podcast comes out, Texas will have just been ending. But he's considering going down there still. So keep the streak alive.
Yeah.
But yeah. So do you guys have anything further? Like, I think this has been really incredible, and you guys have done an incredible job sharing the heartbeat of this weekend. You got anything else?
What was the hardest you laughed over the weekend?
Probably not appropriate to say.
Some of mine are not.
Mine are usually not.
Taylor and I learned a new term from Brandon.
Oh gosh, Brandon Bull.
Yeah.
No, you're not, he's got the bet.
Can I say it?
Sure, say it.
So we were sharing poop stories, and I told this story about we were on a family road trip, and we stopped at this highway roadside Mexican restaurant to eat, and then before we got back on the road, me and my dad went to use the restroom, and I go to the urinal. There's one urinal, and he goes and opens the stall, and you just hear him go, "Oh my gosh." And then he goes, "James, come here." And I go, "No, I don't want." He goes, "Yes, you want to see this." And it looked like a forearm just stuck in the hole. And it's like it's iceberged, right? It's up above the water, and we sit there and just have this moment where we're staring at this log that, I mean,
is this person okay?
Yeah, and we told so many stories about. I wonder if they're still alive, or they left their home to come here to do that because. And then we told all these like stories about it, and Brandon goes, "Man, that poor guy who had to clean that up or whatever." And he goes, "But I'd rather clean that up than a bunch of ass cabbage." And I could not. I like had a whole bite of sandwich in my mouth on the way home, and I almost died. I think that was the hardest I laughed.
Ass cabbage.
Ass cabbage. And what's funny is Taylor and I both laughed even harder after this because there's no explanation needed. You kind of understand exactly what that is.
Yeah. Oh,
sorry, derailed that one.
Oh my gosh. I can't think of. I probably will as soon as I drive away when we leave here tonight, this afternoon. But can't think of one particular instance where I just died laughing.
Yeah.
But I will say that every time I was around Brock, I was laughing.
Yeah.
So Brock brings an energy and a lightheartedness to it, and he walked in the room and I would just start laughing. And he's very self-deprecating about things that he does or doesn't do. So just Brock just brought me to tears every time.
That's awesome.
Brandon and I did a push-up challenge.
Yeah.
And typically when we're together, something like that happens where there's some sort of competition challenge. And it's like, I don't know, I think it was on the way there. And we're like, well, how many do you think you could do? And I'm thinking 100 today is probably doable. I have not been doing push-ups, so don't overdo it, but that I could do that. And so in my head, I'm like, stretch it, 4 days, 500 push-ups. I'm thinking 125 a day. That's probably doable. And somebody said somewhere in that conversation, the number 700 came up. And then I did the math. Is that what it was? 700?
Yeah, it was me.
So thank you, Taylor.
Thanks, Taylor.
Appreciate
Taylor you. Love you, brother.
Taylor said 700. And then Brandon gets his calculator out, or maybe I did, and it was like 170 something a day. And then Brandon goes, okay, so 200 a day. So like it just kept incrementally going up. So the first day, Brandon and I got our 200 push-ups. I did the last 20 on my knees, and it was, I mean, I could like hear muscles ripping almost. Not really, but I could barely do that last 20. And the next day we woke up like, are we still doing this? And then we each made it a little past 100. And then the third day I did 10 push-ups. And then like we just gave up. And Brandon said, yeah, that was a good lesson in goal setting for me. And
attainable goals.
Yeah,
is
we
what
both
you
shared
want.
a similar story where it was like, all right, we made it to 100 push-ups on the first day, then 120, 130, 140, and then about right around in there was like, we've made a mistake.
We've made a grave mistake.
It was fun though. It made it fun. We were filming some footage with Taylor. Wanted to do something on Saturday and kind of recap where we were at that point. We were going to take a golf cart and go find a cool nature spot to do something. And then Josh King was around, and I was like, well, Josh should come. So we got a mic on Josh, and then Ryan walked up, and we're like, well, Ryan should come. And then it was like, well, where are we going to go? And I was like, let's just hop in the golf cart and see what happens. So we took 2 different golf carts and went, and the trails, I hope they're still operational after this.
And we do mean just regular golf cart. These have no lift kits on them or mud tires. These are just regular golf carts, right?
That were not ours.
Yeah.
And we start going down this trail, and it had poured the day before. And so we start going down this trail, everything's fine. And then we kind of come up over this hill, and it's like everything's washed out. There are craters. And I mean, it was like we stopped, and I was like, well. And Josh was in the cart with me, and Taylor and Ryan were in the other cart. And me and Josh get out, and we are looking at this thing and scoping it out. Somebody said like it's the Rubicon Trail. Like we took this way too seriously. Like, okay, I think you can like bank left, hit that dry patch right, go, and then we way overthought it. We get back in the golf cart, and I just slam that gas. Like I'm just like, there is no stopping, and we're going downhill. And it's just like crazy. And we were laughing, and we make it through, and we're like, yeah, and it was just so much fun. And we found a great spot to film stuff. We wouldn't have seen the canoe tip if we hadn't have done that.
Yeah.
Met a great camper, and there's way much more God story on the tail end of that. But I'll leave you with just the adventure of it and the fun of it, and trusting God to just go. You don't have to have all the answers up front.
That's so
just
cool.
start moving forward and kind of see what happens. And it was fun. That was a highlight for me. Yeah.
Well, we raffled off a pretty cool item for this one. We had an electric scooter that we all got the chance to take a few spins on.
Yes,
and I heard
fun.
you kind of went around quite a bit with it.
Oh, yeah. I was hawking tickets like crazy.
Mhm.
It was, for a good
Those
cause.
things are awesome.
It
man.
was fun.
I talked to the guy that won it yesterday. He said he's got a gravel
Chance.
Chance.
That's right.
And
Chance
he's got like a gravel road. He's like, I got it up to 23 miles an hour yesterday.
He was so excited.
Yeah. He said the same thing. He was like out there like like banging around.
Yeah.
So
It was
awesome
fun.
stuff.
Yeah, that thing was fun.
Yeah. Well,
I just want to say that a lot of men that I talk to and invite to join us at Basecamp, like I did back in 2017, 2018, there's a reluctance to go, especially men my age, empty nesters. We've, gained some stripes over the years and feel like we kind of have a good handle on it. And, even if you're in a good place, You don't have to have a failing marriage or a dysfunctional family or a problem at work or a personal struggle that you're dealing with. You can be in a great place. I think it's just always great to get away, to have some fun, whether it be on a golf cart, shooting some shotguns, doing a ropes course.
Yeah.
Just to get out of town and get away and
turn the phone off
and just listen and be open to God's creation, to his voice. I mean, that's what we're all about. So I just encourage anyone, wherever you are in your spiritual journey, take a couple days for yourself. If nothing else, you're going to get some good laughs. You're going to relax. You're going to hear some great content, and it's only going to sharpen your relationship with your Father, with your Creator.
That's good.
That's so good. We'll have to clip that. That was really good. Well, thank you guys for stepping into this. This is the beginning of a beautiful journey for Chad. We've already been going down this road with you for a long time, and we've got many years of ministry left together. We always talk about being old men sitting on the porch together and the stories that we're going to get to share. And I'm so looking forward to it and all the years that are going to lead up to that. And so thank you guys for who you are and stepping into who God's called you guys to be, because you're both tremendous assets for True North, yes, but tremendous friends and just good men. And you're always just stepping into your true identity all the time when people are around you. So well done. Thank you for being on this today and sharing what the experience was like. My prayer is that people listening to this will either be reminded, refreshed, excited, or inspired to get involved with True North for the first time, or even more involved, or just tell other people about what's going on here through these stories. So thank you guys for being on today.
Thank you, James.
Thanks for the invite.
Yep.
Been a pleasure.
Freedom on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Freedom.